In this lecture, we're going to talk about the structure of the emergency medical system. We're going to give you an overview of who the players are. We're going to identify them and give you a little bit of background as we go through the rest of this class about their training, their history, and the legality. But in this lecture, we're just going to talk about the structure and give you a little bit of a diagram to show you where the players are and where they are located in the system. Here we show you in this slide a structure of the emergency medical system. It's sort of a pyramidal structure, and at the very apex are doctors. Doctors are key to the system. They are the most important players, and at the very top. One of the important things to remember about the development of this system is that it has developed because in most of the globe, the ratio of doctors to patients in developed countries is about 50-1. But when you get to some of the undeveloped countries, that can be 50,000-1. So that means that you need people other than the doctor who are able to provide some type of services to varying degrees. The emergency medical system that we are familiar with in the modern world is a modern construct. It has developed primarily in the last portion of the 1800s through the 19th century and into the early 20th century. It is designed to fill in that void as we moved from a rural society to a more urban complex society. Doctors represent the highly skilled. As underneath those, and you will see EMTs and nurses who have more advanced training but who are subordinate to doctors, and below that we have responders and first responders. We're going to talk about those at length here as the categories. They are very different in terms of their structure. And then at the very bottom we have what are called the lay responders. Those are people who are trained in basic skills and who are trained only to do certain limited things in an emergency. So this gives you some overall structure of how the emergency medical system has evolved. As I said, it is a recent construct, most of this having come into place in the 19th and 20th centuries, and it is still in the process of evolving. It has moved away from a rural structure to a more urban centralized structure, as you will see here in this next slide. What we are finding, according to the World Health Organization, is that urban and rural populations are 50-50, or about 50-50, but you will find that that's going to change over time as we see that more and more people are going to be in urban complexes. But even today, as of 2012, we can see that most of the professionals that we need, the nurses and doctors, are concentrated in urban settings, not in rural settings, but in urban settings. This demonstrates our shift away from rural environments to a more urban complex or urban centers environment. Because of this, we needed people, the system needed people to be able to fill the void as population density increased, but as the number of medical professionals rose more slowly, you needed people to fill the void left by the divergence of these numbers. So what has developed over time is the emergence of other groups other than doctors and nurses to help fill the need created by growing numbers of people in urban centers with high population densities. Now, it's important to note that in any major emergency, you will find that medical facilities quickly become overwhelmed because there aren't enough doctors and nurses to handle the problem, so you have these intermediate groups. Most importantly, we see the emergence of EMTs, responders, certified and uncertified responders, and the emergence of lay responders. In today's world, still with all the training that we have undergone and with the effort of all the major agencies, 70% of the people involved in an emergency will not survive because the people around them are not trained appropriately, even at the basic level. So with the evolution of the emergency medical system, we can see there has been a need for more persons with training, and these persons represent new and distinct categories that had to be accounted for and had to be merged with the system in one way or the other. And they brought with them a group of new requirements. We see the doctors sit at the apex, nurses and EMTs with better training below them, and then these new categories of responders, certified responders, and lay responders who are involved in the process beneath them. As we go through the additional lectures, we're going to define what each of these groups are and give you some idea or a look into their training and to their historical backgrounds and to why they become so important to the emergency medical system as it exists today. So this is going to wrap up this lecture, and we're going to move on now to the next lecture where we're going to go into depth to each of these categories and give you some understanding about them.